Our first speaker today is Amber Reimer. She's an innovative product strategist with over a decade of entrepreneurial experience working with Fortune 50 companies, agencies, and burgeoning startups. She's spearheaded transformative consumer experiences for industry giants such as Target, Amazon, and Stitch Fix. With a master's degree in interpersonal communication from the University of Texas at Austin, she specializes in pioneering consumer product strategies, leveraging design thinking methodologies, and social science scholarship. And she will be sharing today, yes, and coupling behavioral science with design thinking to build more impactful products. Welcome, Amber.
Thanks, Nora. Let me get my screen up. Okay, good morning. And thanks again, Nora, for the lovely introduction. I am so excited to be here and share some thoughts that have been bouncing around my brain for a while in terms of how we might create even more impact through our design thinking process. I can't recall the exact moment when I first learned about design thinking, but I know I was hooked from the start. I think it was probably in my very earliest days at Target, so that places it about 15 years ago. Spoiler alert, this actually isn't me 15 years ago, but you get the vibe. I loved design thinking from the get-go. I soaked up everything I could about it that I could get my hands on. I read the books, I took all the classes, I followed the blogs, you name it. You see, I've always been on these scrappy greenfield teams, the ones who lived on the periphery of their respective mothership, if you will, who were always tasked with discovering what new thing we should go do next. So naturally, design thinking quickly became my go-to in my product ideation toolbox. And boy, did it work. I've designed everything from that annoying experience of going in on a big wedding gift with friends to streamlining the shopping experience across devices. I've even used design thinking to help make truck drivers' daily task list a little less painful. And on that last one, I even convinced several squads of Amazon engineers to humor me just for a day for a full design thinking workshop, if you can believe it. The output always solved real user problems and pain points, and business results followed. Life was great. But over the last few years, I've started to wonder if we're leaving value on the table. As the problems I was trying to solve got a bit thornier, the world around us seemingly is getting a bit thornier. Are we going deep enough? Are we putting the best possible solutions out there? Or are they just good enough? This hunch really came into focus for me as I spent the past few years focused specifically on helping people new to credit understand and build credit. Enter that thorny, complex problem. We empathize via in-depth interviews, surveys, and ongoing app feedback analysis. We created personas. We co-created prototypes of experiences with our users. We did all the things. We checked all the design thinking boxes. And things were okay, but I couldn't shake that feeling that we were just scratching the surface of the iceberg in terms of understanding everything that is really going on with individuals beneath the surface around that challenge of confidently establishing credit. People would tell us over and over again, just tell me exactly what I need to do and I'll do it. But as you all know, it's just not that simple. Money especially is complicated, and our relationship with money is complicated. People often don't do what they say they will do as easy as you make it for them, even when you make it with them. So IDEO says that design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation that brings together what is desirable from a human point of view with what is technologically feasible and economically viable. But commonly, at least in my experience of leveraging this process, we tend to limit that scope of desirability or that definition of desirability to that which is consciously desirable by the user, what they're telling us and what we can observe. One could argue, yes, maybe we note emotions, maybe we note some nonverbals when gathering insights to develop those personas or during interviews in these co creation workshops. But this is still really only scratching the surface of that full iceberg of what's really happening behind the scenes. So, how might we go beyond identifying simply what is consciously desirable for our users and push deeper and broader to also understand what might be happening below the surface or unconsciously? Because I believe that only when we consider the full picture, what's happening with the full brain, can we truly unlock the potential for maximum impact. So, one potential tool we could leverage more consistently to close that gap is behavioral science. So, behavioral science is the interdisciplinary field that studies human actions, thoughts, and emotions to understand why people behave the way they do and how they interact with their environment. Many of you are probably familiar with nudges and habit loops, concepts that have become prominent in product circles in the past decade or so. But behavioral science goes much deeper and broader. It draws from the fields of cognitive science, sociology, psychology, anthropology, and even neuroscience, with the goal of having a truly interdisciplinary view of human behavior. So, where to start? Well, we only have 20 minutes today. So, I'm just going to touch on a few behavioral science theories and show you how we might leverage them to create better solutions. Ready for your crash course? Here we go. So here's your BSci 101, starting with attribution theory. Attribution theory explores how people interpret and assign causes to events and behaviors. It helps explain how individuals make sense of their own actions as well as those of others. So, one of my favorite concepts under attribution theory is locus of control. Humans' locus of control generally consists of three concentric circles. That innermost circle are the things you can control, like your thoughts, actions, and decisions. And then the middle concentric circle are the things you can influence, like other people's thoughts, actions, and decisions. And then finally, that outer circle are things you can't control, like the economy, traffic, and the weather. So, what does that look like in the real world? So, referring back to my most recent thorny problem, in the context of building credit, locus of control plays a significant role in how individuals perceive their ability to manage finances. So, someone with an internal locus might believe that their credit score is directly influenced by their actions. For example, they might say, I improved my credit score because I created a budget, I paid my bills on time, and I managed my debt responsibly. They feel empowered to take charge of their situation through specific behaviors. On the other hand, someone with an external locus might believe that external factors are largely responsible for their situation. They could say something like, my credit score is bad because the economy is tough, and I can't control what the banks decide. They may feel that building credit is out of their hands, relying more on circumstances or blaming bad luck rather than taking ownership of their financial habits. So let's try applying this in our design thinking process. During the empathize phase, we could observe and identify how users make sense of their behaviors and experiences. Are they attributing challenges to lack of skill or a poor app interface, perhaps? Then during the define phase, consider reframing problems based on those attributional styles that you discovered in the initial phase. So, how might we design an interface that empowers the individual to feel in control of building their credit? Understanding this can shape how we design products that empower users to feel more in control or provide guidance for those who need more structure. See, you're already well on your way. You passed 101 with flying colors. Now on to B side 201, temporal discounting. So, this refers to the tendency for people to devalue rewards or benefits that are set to be received in the future compared to those that are available immediately. We study this to understand how people make decisions over time, especially when it involves weighing immediate rewards versus delayed ones. And it can explain real world behaviors such as procrastination, impulsivity, addiction, saving for retirement, and even health related decision making, like dieting or exercise. Behavioral economists use temporal discounting to explain why people might fail to save money or choose unhealthy foods despite knowing the long term consequences. So, for example, let's say someone is deciding between paying off a credit card balance or spending that money on a last minute midwinter beach vacation, which I for sure have never done. Temporal discounting can cause them to focus on the immediate gratification of taking the vacation, despite knowing that paying off the credit card would benefit their financial future more. That allure of the short term reward, lying on the beach in the sun next week, outweighs the future benefit of being debt free and improving their credit score, even though the long term benefit there is much bigger. So let's apply it. While empathizing, recognize the user's preference for immediate gratification. How does this influence their choices and behavior? And then again, define problems with a focus on reducing the impact of temporal discounting if it is in fact evident. For example, how might we make long term benefits feel more immediate and tangible? Understanding the presence of temporal discounting can help in designing products that incentivize that long term thinking, such as providing small, immediate rewards for good financial behavior to help counteract that pull of the immediate gratification. You are almost there, just one class left for graduation. We are on to Behavioral Science 301, Self Determination Theory. This one is a biggie. This framework focuses on human motivation and the factors that help people feel more motivated, engaged, and fulfilled. No big deal, right? So it's based on the idea that humans have three basic psychological needs that, when satisfied, promote well being and growth. Those three basic needs are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So, autonomy here refers to the need to feel in control of your own actions and decisions. You see, people are more motivated when they feel like they're making choices that align with their own values and interests rather than being forced into something. Competence is the desire to feel capable and effective in what you're doing. When people experience success or mastery, they're more likely to stay motivated and push themselves further. And then finally, relatedness is the need to feel connected to others, to have meaningful relationships and a sense of belonging. So when people feel supported by others, they're more motivated to engage in tasks and activities. So back to our building credit example. To feel competent, our user needs to believe they are capable of successfully managing their credit. So a product that helps them track their progress and provides a clear positive feedback, like notifications that show their credit score increasing or acknowledging that they made a payment on time. This will boost their sense of competence. The more they feel they are improving and mastering that credit building process, the more motivated they become to continue. So, in simple terms, self determination theory suggests that if you create environments where people feel autonomous, competent, and connected, they're more likely to thrive and maintain intrinsic motivation, or that motivation that comes from within. So, we can apply this by first assessing the state of fulfillment of their psychological needs. During the empathize phase, try to figure out, are their needs for autonomy, competence, and relatedness being met, and to what degree? Then frame that problem around any unmet psychological needs. How might we create experiences that enhance users' sense of autonomy and competence, for example? A financial product designed with self-determination theory in mind might provide users with options to control their credit building journey, giving them autonomy, giving them regular progress to updates and feedback, competence, and offer community or even mentorship features, which gets to relatedness. And again, when a person feels in control, capable, and supported, they're far more likely to stay motivated and succeed in improving their credit over time. Congratulations, you just completed BSI 101, 201, and 301. Yet you might still be thinking, that's all well and good, but my thinking process is a well-oiled machine. Why should I mess with a good thing? And to that, I say yes, and let's do better. We have collectively done great work by applying and evangelizing the design thinking process to get us here. But let's keep pushing. Products that resonate with users both consciously and unconsciously are stickier, increasing engagement and retention. And not even to mention that tapping into these unconscious behaviors can cause us to view problems or opportunities from a completely different angle, leading to innovative breakthroughs for product design and strategy. So to boil it all down for you, one, I encourage you to broaden your scope or your definition of desirability when deploying design thinking to ensure you're capturing both conscious and unconscious influences of behavior. Two, we've just scratched the surface, which is putting it mildly, of behavioral science. I implore you to go explore this incredibly rich area for yourself. There is so much cool stuff out there. And then finally, you can apply behavioral science theory across the full design thinking process. But personally, I think the biggest opportunity for disruptive thinking is to start first in the early phases of empathize and define. And thank you. Here are a few of my favorite sources online for nerding out on this stuff. If you are intrigued and you want to go do a little digging yourself. And of course, I would love nothing more than to chat further about this stuff. I think it's so fascinating. And I'm always up for collaborating on interesting projects. So don't be afraid to reach out directly. Thanks.
Thanks, Amber. That was fascinating. So for everyone, if you have questions for Amber, feel free to put them in the chat. And we have a few moments to pick her brain a little further. So I have a couple of them already in here, but again, keep adding them and we'll get to them. All of your application examples are in the empathize and define phases of the design thinking process. Are you suggesting behavioral science isn't as relevant for the other phases, like ideate, prototyping, and test?
Yeah, I think definitely not wanting to insinuate that there's not value across the board there. Um, I think it's been behavioral science, as I mentioned, via the concepts of nudges or the habit loop, or even, I think Kellogg offers a full MBA on choice marketing, So I think it's has been much more commonplace in terms of, how it might apply to UX, UI versus using it as a tool to make sure that you're actually framing your problem or your opportunity correctly. So to me, that's the area that is most ripe for improving our output, is to make sure that we're using it to get our problem correctly defined. But that being said, going back to the yes and, I think it's absolutely wholeheartedly a yes and across the board. I think we should be applying that lens across all aspects of the process.
Awesome. All right, I have another, and you guys, if you have them, feel free to add some more. Are there scenarios in which behavioral science is more applicable than other scenarios? Are there any times which you wouldn't recommend using it?
I'm definitely biased in this, and I would say I always default to doing the check to, make sure that there is no value that would come out of, you know, checking that box. Because really, behavioral science, I think, would be beneficial in any scenario where you're assessing and or you're trying to improve or change behavior, which if you're working in not just consumer products, but it's hard off the top of my head. I can't think of an actual product that doesn't have an end user, right? Even if that's a business user, B2B. Um, I once had someone ask me about, how do you use human-centered processes if you are um, a back-end systems engineer. And, my challenge or my answer to that challenge was, it might take you longer to get to your end user. Maybe there's more layers in between, but there is someone out there eventually that is being impacted by, how you're architecting things. So I'm sure there are examples in which it's probably not applicable, and there are varying degrees of that. But I think more often than not, there would be value in at least doing that check up front.
That makes sense. All right, I have another one. So one of our attendees has been geeking out on emergent futures point of view that cognitive engagement is a missing step in early exploration before you even get to empathize. So this person is wondering if cognitive engagement is something that behavioral scientists also study, and if you have any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten deep into that myself, but just knowing how broad and how wide of a net behavioral science catches, definitely gets into the cognitive side of things. I actually dabbled in some of I actually have this book, 7.5 Lessons on the Brain, about the brain, from Lisa Feldman Barrett. I recommend. It's an easy read. I mean, relatively easy read. Everyone should read it once because it's fascinating in terms of just cognition, and then how that then, yes, kind of layers down into actual behaviors that impact the things that we create. So um, I think absolutely that is encompassed within behavioral science, and totally agree that, even before you get into empathize, there's a lot of groundwork, research, fact finding that you can do that can set you up to be better prepared for, how you approach any sort of problem, solution, or opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Last one. Do you have any top best tips for how to apply this type of thinking during stakeholder or audience interviews? You mentioned paying attention to body language or other tactical advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first tip that comes to mind is, I think, especially when trying to be more mindful about assessing, these behavioral science influences, it's even more important to not do these interviews by yourself, right? And I know that's a top tip in general when, you're going out and you're doing qualitative research, but I know uh, myself included, oftentimes we don't have the luxury of having that type of um, support, to always have someone with us to be taking notes and observing. But I think here it's so critical, right? Because you just, as an interviewer, as a solo interviewer, you can't be observing and assessing and documenting all at the same time. So I think easy, 101 tip is make sure you have an additional person there that's dedicated to taking those notes and really looking and trained and looking for certain things from the behavioral science lens. And so that probably does also require some minimum amount of upfront training or tuning, if you will, with this individual to make sure that you're aligned on the aspects that you have hunches around or you have hypotheses around already. Whether that's going in looking for intrinsic motivations or psychological needs, kind of having a checklist up front for that individual to make sure that they're mindfully observing as you're going through your observations.
That makes a ton of sense.